Okay, so welcome, good morning everyone, and thank you for choosing to attend this session when we're going to discuss a question that has been bothering me for a decade now, I think. It started in my academic chapter when I researched leadership. It followed me into my practice as an organizational psychologist in companies in the US, in Israel, as external, as internal. And nowadays, I'm facing it as an entrepreneur and the CEO of my own company, thinking about the company that I want to build, and as a mother, thinking about my kids' future workplace and how will it look. So if you're here, I assume that this question that we're asking today has itched you or bugged you or crossed your mind as well, and that's why we're all here. So before we start to challenge and ask, do we need managers in the 21st century, I want to go back to the past and start at the origins of management. And what was the function of management when we first conceptualized it? So management was conceptualized in the first industrial revolution, where technological advancement allowed us production at scale. The analogy for organization was the analogy of a machine, with managers in the position to coordinate, to plan, to allocate resources, to reward, to make whatever they need to make the machine run smoothly. The people in the machine had very specific jobs that we could easily define and easily measure at the individual level. And when we wanted the outcome of that machine, when the machine is working well, what we wanted as an outcome was standardization. We wanted each of our customers to get the exact same product. And managers were in the best position knowing how to do so. The workforce in the first industrial revolution was also different. It was mostly uneducated workforce, so it was easier for us to think, how can we put those with expertise, those with knowledge, in those managerial positions? But 150 years have passed, and the reality changed dramatically around us. Today, it's very difficult to define and describe a specific job description that will hold everything that we want. And if we have this description, most of the times, if our employees will follow that description just to the dot, we won't be happy. We want extra role. We want initiative. We want our employees to think outside of the box. Just doing one's job is not enough anymore. Our customers also changed. Standardization is not the priority anymore. They want personalization. And personalization requires a whole new set of processes, unlike standardization. And our people changed as well. And we can see it in the language that have changed over the years. Right? We started with workforce, human resources, human capital, talent, and recently, you won't believe it, companies are calling their employees people. Yeah? It's a very dramatic change of language from workforce to people. And although we changed the design of our offices, and we put into some extra fun work activities, and we put a lot of emphasis on engagement and culture, at the end of the day, the underlying operational model is still the same as it was 150 years ago. So what we're experiencing now is a clash. It's a clash between the needs for agility and speed that we have today with the operational system that is not allowing us that fast movement. And this clash is even more experienced more in the daily life because our employees, the parts of the systems, are living in the 21st century with data and technology enabling their every move in their daily lives. So the clash is experienced on a daily basis. So through observation and my experience, I've come to notice that not only the managerial model is becoming less and less effective, I found many times when it was actually disruptive and destructive for companies, for employees, and for the managers themselves. For companies, we talk about predictions that 50% of S&P 500 companies will disappear, and these trends have been for years, and these predictions, we have them for years, and we keep them going. These are the predictions, and we've experienced it on our own. If you would have asked me just over 10 years ago, Nokia was the best. I truly, truly loved my Nokia phone. I was connected to it. I never thought I will switch to any other thing. And probably I would have stayed with Nokia if they would have changed fast enough. But management was too fearful of changing. So while the engineers of Nokia had smartphones in their pockets coming to work, they couldn't work on the new technologies that they had in their pocket. The data for employees, well, not also very enlightening. We have 75% of people disengaged. We have 61% of people indicating they got mentally or physically sick from stress from work. 61%. And we have 55% of employees, only 55% of employees say they have trust in management. Take a minute to look at these numbers. When we say our people, our competitive advantage, we have a problem. If people are our competitive advantage, we have a problem. And not only that we have a problem, it's deeper. Because when we come to deal with these numbers, we are working from the same system that created them. And I want to give you an example. So in the beginning of this year, I attended a People Analytics meetup. And in this meetup, a couple of companies came to present the projects that they did. One of the people presenting was very proud to present an employee turnover prediction model, okay, that they did. And then she continued to tell us how they communicated that model to managers. But the problem they faced was that 20% of the variance in employee turnover was due to management. So what they did was, when they communicated it to management, they took out the managerial factor from the model because they didn't want their managers to be upset and discouraged. And when I listened to her, I realized two things. First, the data is consistent. Managers are one of the top reasons that employees leave companies. And the second thing I realized is that the chance for us to change is stuck because we are trying to change from within the operational system itself. But I don't blame managers. I actually think that managers are the ones to suffer the most. We are living in times of change that us humans have never experienced before. We are living in a world where globalization, connectivity, multi-generational, disparate workforce, and I could go on. This is crazy to manage all of this, and we ask our managers to manage complexity. But complexity is about interconnectivity. It's about systems thinking. Complexity cannot be managed with a linear, hierarchical, formal model. So all of this leads to the fact that managers are suffering the most. 75% of senior managers are beyond stress. They are simply burnt out. Now it will work. No. Okay. So all of these data and my own observations got me to think maybe it's time for a disruption. Right? We disrupt everything in our lives right now. Why not disrupt the 150-year-old model? We say jobs are disappearing everywhere. Could it be that the managerial jobs are disappearing as well? Disruption, unlike innovation, is not doing what we do now in better ways with new ideas. It's about making what we do right now obsolete. And to think if we can make the management model obsolete, to entertain this question, I want to try and break down a couple of the assumptions that we make when we take the managerial model as granted. And the first assumption that I want to talk about is the assumption of management and leadership at large. Sorry. So, when we talk about leadership research in academia, what samples do we use? Managers and MBA students. When we talk about organizational leadership, who are we talking about? Management. When we do leadership development programs, who are they for? Management. But despite the fact that we use the language together, and despite our intentions, our best intentions, that managers will be leaders, leadership is not management. Management are formal positions assigned to people with a formal process. Leadership is about trust granted to people in an informal, dynamic process. And we got to think that leadership is something that the leader has. It's either a trait or it's in their skills. Leadership is in the leader. But the truth is that leadership is a social process, is a dynamic process of role-taking. And the only way you become a leader, no one is a leader unless they have someone that follows them. Followers make a leader. And when that trust is granted to the leader, it enhances leadership and the confidence of the leader in leading, which this confidence then strengthens the confidence of the followers in following. It's a dynamic process. It's a relational process. And not only that leadership is not in the leader, each of us can be in leadership and followership positions at the exact same time. Because you see, if we want to maximize leadership capacity, we need our followers to be leaders. Look at that red person here, right? That's her circle of direct influence. If none of her followers had any influence further, this would be the circle of influence for that red person. But if we take and expand into second and third circles of influence, because we are influencing up to 3 degrees away from us. So if we think and expand these into 2 circles out, we can see that the red person, their circle of influence, their leadership capacity is actually much greater when the followers are also leaders. So we are never only leaders, we are never only followers, we are playing our role as we go, and this dynamic change in roles allow us to bring all that we are to the table in whichever capacity we're able to perform, to take the role. So instead of the analogy of the machine that we had in the 19th century, for this, the better analogy of the organization is that of an organism. But the question you may have is, but who is controlling the organism, right? And I want you to take a moment and dive deep into the notion of control and think, what do we need control over? Do we need control over resources, over hiring, over budgeting? What do we need control over, and why do we need it? Now, I don't want to give you an answer. I want to give you an example. I want to give you the example of a company called the Morningstar Company. Anyone heard of the Morningstar Company? So the Morningstar Company was starting its self-management journey in 1990. It's a company that is still alive today, making $700 million in revenue each year, and it's the largest tomato processor in the world. Oh, and it has no bosses. So let's see how it works.
I love working here at Morningstar.
To me, it's unlike the government, you know. We have a lot of freedom here.
I love this job. I plan on working here until I retire.
So who's the boss? I think in a traditional organization, there's kind of a very rigid interpretation of who the boss is.
We have no bosses here at Morningstar.
I have no boss. So, well, everybody's basically a boss.
When you come on board at Morningstar, you and the colleagues around you are expected to kind of take a time out, sit down, examine yourself, your competencies, your what you have to bring to the table, the things you're trying to achieve in your career and in your life, and to organize your work accordingly. And as long as you are achieving your mission and the enterprise is achieving their mission, there really aren't a whole lot of boundaries around how that works.
If I need to spend $80,000 on a lab instrument, I buy the lab instrument. In my other company, that doesn't fly. Not only would I not get it, the process to get to that point is very difficult.
The best thing for me working here at Morningstar is I'm constantly learning, constantly growing, constantly being exposed to things I normally wouldn't be exposed to.
I think I've improved our dice area a lot the last 3 years.
I started with other colleagues' help, a full document control program.
We added a product hopper to one of our lines, so we increased the line speed from 80 cans a minute to about 150 cans a minute.
I think most human beings have some internal drive that they want to do good things that create some sort of benefit for people.
I feel like Morningstar is mine. I believe all of us here take ownership, and that's one of the things that makes it great.
When work follows you home, but in a good way, when it helps you feel good about what you're doing, that kind of growth rubs off into personal life.
What Morningstar has kind of become is a place where people learn what it means to have true individual freedom and personally be responsible for their actions. And that's actually a very invigorating thing for most people. And so over time, they start to kind of embed this into their personality, into their fundamental character. And they kind of carry that away when they leave Morningstar.
So, do we need control? Or is there another way? Morningstar put in place the mechanisms and processes that allow for self-management with mutual accountability. And mutual accountability, if you think about it, is a much stronger force to bound the network than formal positions. It's a much stronger form of control on our human behaviors, because we are controlling our own behaviors because we want to belong and we are accountable for our actions. So, is it a matter of control? And I showed you this video for 3 reasons. First, because when I say self-management, and maybe we don't need managers, I get this looks, right? How does it look? I can't even imagine it from where I'm standing now. So first, I wanted to bring the video to bring it to life, to give you a visual of how this new alternative might look like. Second, I wanted to show you this video because another claim that I get is that, oh, this is for high tech. But no, this is not about an industry. This is about an approach. This is about a mindset, not about an industry. Tomato processing. And third, I wanted to show you this video because, and even before this session, right, someone told me the same exact thing. People tell me, but people don't want to work. They won't work unless they are managed. So they look at people and they say, okay, people are disengaged, people come to work only because they have to, they don't really want to work, they want to slack out. But what do? We judge people from within the system that they are in. And people, us, we are all, me too, we are adaptive to systems. And I want to show you an example.
The gentleman in the elevator now is a candid star. These folks who are entering, the man with the white shirt, the lady with the trench coat, and subsequently one other member of our staff, will face the rear. And you'll see how this man in the trench coat tries to maintain his individuality, but little by little, he looks at his watch, but he's really making an excuse for turning just a little bit more to the wall.
So we judge people from within the hierarchical systems they're in. Organizations are hierarchical systems with hierarchical cues that make us do different things. It makes us say yes when we mean no, it's a bad idea, but we say yes. It makes us have an idea and then think, never mind, until I'll push it forward. So I won't drive innovation or have any initiative. Make us share knowledge, because knowledge is power and I want to progress, so I better keep my knowledge to myself. It makes us do all kinds of things that maybe we wouldn't have done if we worked in a different system. And the founder of Morningstar had a really clear understanding of people when he founded Morningstar and decided for it to be self-managed. And he realized that only if you give people control over their lives at work, people will be able to realize their potential at work. But this is not an easy solution. I don't have something to draw out of my pocket like a magic, turn every organization upside down and turn them into self-management. And the truth is, there is no one self-management paradigm for you to take on and just implement in your company. This is an experimentation. This is an ongoing process, just like we experiment with other disruptions we are going on now. We don't have all the answers, but we have places to learn from. So first is Morningstar, as I showed you today. We can look at Hair, who bought General Electric and works as 4,000 self-organizing units. And we can look at Zappos, that was bought by Amazon for $850 million. So we have some examples to start learn from. Some already experimented with this and succeeded. And you can find resources and communities online where we have these discussions, where we try to figure this out globally together. We sit together and talk about how can we move companies into this next stage. We share our experiences and our experiments, and we talk to one another. And from these discussions and from these learning points, there are a few tips. So, if you're ready to take a leap of faith and start believing that maybe there is another alternative for work, there are things that you can experiment with tomorrow morning. But before I go into what we can experiment with tomorrow morning, I want to try to run a little experiment here, okay? So, and I'll ask your participation, please. So I'm going to state a couple of statements, and if it's true for you, please make sure to lift your hand and leave your hand up high so we can all see, okay? So raise your hand if it's true for you that you have an app, an Excel, some sort of form where you manage your tasks. When you manage your budget. Keep your hands up. Don't take them down. No down, only up. If you manage your running, your bicycling, your health, how many of us, look around, are managing our lives every single day with technology and data? Each and every person here raised their hand in one form or another of my questions. So we are able to manage ourselves. We do this every day. So the first step is starting with the belief. Is starting with believing in people, that people, we can trust them and they can manage themselves. But then we need to go in, back to our companies, and look at the processes. Look at the system. Look at the cues that the system is giving. And what are these cues? What types of behaviors are we encouraging with the system that we have put in place? And when you do that, think about all the new systems you bring in with the data and technology and AI and VR. Think about all of these great stuff that you're bringing in and think, are there innovation helping managers manage better? Or are they disrupting and helping employees manage themselves? How do you use data and technology? And I'm not criticizing management, but rather the operational system. And I actually think that to change it, we need to start from the managers themselves. And I have very many discussions with managers themselves telling me, tell me more. Tell me how can I do this in my team. So managers themselves already want. There are managers out there that already want. And I want to end with, and I won't show you the video, I'll just tell you what he said, with Viktor Frankl. He's a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor This is a video from 1972.
They wish to make a lot of money. In Europe, every American student, even more every American adult, is regarded as someone who is just out to make a lot of money. Really, 16% of these students regarded their main goal and concern in life to make a lot of money. I'm quoting literally, make a lot of money. You know what the top category was? 78% of these American youngsters were concerned, as they expressed it themselves, with finding a meaning and purpose in their lives.
So it's 2019, and only 16% cared about money then, and 80% wanted meaning, and we say the same today, but we're still focusing our questions on the money. We sit here today and ask, what professions will we have in 20 years? And what do we need to give our students now so they'll be able to do those jobs in 20 years? But I think we should ask a question of meaning. What type of work models do we teach our students so they can realize their potential, lead and follow, regardless of the job that they will do in 20 years? Thank you very much for taking the time and be here. Thank you.